The Not So Great Pretender by Reishipo Ujiha. Chapter 2. Tony starts small. Well, small is such a relative term, especially as it turns out for him. Because if Jarvis's dry comments can be taken at face value, Tony's definition of small might in fact be considered a bit overboard by other people's standards. But considering the fact that so many people ascribe to that ridiculous less is more philosophy, Tony doesn't think they should get as much of a say in his units of measurements. In life in general, and in this case with the situation being what it is in particular, Tony's going to go with one of his own personal mottos. More is more. Because it's logical and mathematically correct. And anyone who wants to argue that it's not meant to be taken literally can kiss his butt. Except for Pepper. Because she's terrifying and he's high-key frightened and in awe of her. Honestly, Happy's a brave man. Which Tony admits with no small amount of bitterness might in retrospect be why there's a growing faction of people who are sure that Happy is the one actually wearing the armor. Rhodey thinks it's hilarious, Pepper's smug, and Happy preens every time the idea is brought up. Tony's going to be sending him on literal milk runs for the next 6 months. Or at least he would if Happy didn't spend most of his time shadowing Pepper. But Tony's ever-flowing well of bitterness aside, the point is that he starts off relatively tame. His first step down the road, that is pursuing option 3, is actually a pretty obvious move. Tony's going to purposefully get caught inside the armor. There's absolutely no way that can backfire on him. It takes a surprising amount of timing to make the entire thing happen organically. Tony has some standards after all, as sideways and offbeat as they might be to other people. He isn't going to just waltz into the middle of the common room floor during movie night while wearing the armor and then drop drow in front of the other Avengers. Because as Rhodey once told him, a striptease is not the answer to all of his problems. So yeah, Tony's not even considering that option seriously. He's not. Really? Even if them seeing him shed the armor all the way down to his silky unmentionables might actually get the message across loud and clear. Tony shakes the thoughts out of his head for the moment and forces himself to focus completely on what he's doing at the moment. And what he's doing is maintenance on the armor. The armor that he's currently wearing except for the helmet. Sir, Jarvis pipes up then. Captain Rogers is here to see you. Let him in, Jay. Tony tells him as he manipulates the hologram in front of him with ease despite the gauntlets he's still wearing. Tony! Steve sounds downright chipper as he practically bounds through the door. He's in his gym clothes and Tony's pretty sure if he had a tail it would be wagging. Which is both intriguing and also a thought he'd like to never have again. Thankfully, though, before Tony can go any further down that cursed train of thought, Steve pretty much skids to a halt a few feet away from him. There's an expression of surprise on his face, blue eyes wide and brows high as his eyes rake over the holograms in front of Tony and the armor that he's openly wearing. You're in the armor, Steve trails off a bit. Why are you in the armor, Tony? Well, Tony drawls, unable to stop the sarcasm that comes spilling out of him as he stares Steve down through the blue glow of the hologram between them. It's obviously not because I'm Iron Man or anything. I'm obviously just doing a fitting to make sure everything's working right. The projection of the armor that's floating front and center between them is detailed and interactive. The body model in the hologram is an exact replica of Tony right down to the goatee. It's also currently making obscene gestures in Steve's direction. Which is honestly not Tony's doing. He suspects Jarvis is not so carefully hidden malicious and a petty streak is at work. Really? Of course, Tony. Steve beams at him, still overly toothy and rash-invokingly sincere. Tony's going to switch his toothpaste while he's sleeping because his smile is so blindingly white, it's honestly frightening. You're so dedicated to making sure Iron Man's fighting fit. He's lucky to have you taking such good care of his armor like this. We're all lucky to have you. A ball of dread and flagrant disbelief falls hard and heavy to rest in the pit of Tony's stomach. I won't keep you long then. Steve smiles, hands on his hips and hair falling into his eyes a bit as he beams at Tony. Was just hoping you'd come up for dinner tonight. It's Clint's turn to cook, so we'll be getting pizza after he stops trying. It'll be around 8, so don't work too hard and pass out down here again. Steve turns on his heel and saunters back towards and then out of the workshop door with only another wave and a smile passed over his shoulder in Tony's direction. Tony stares at the empty doorway for a while before his legs finally give out on him. He ends up sitting in the reinforced office chair that Dumb E had, probably on Jarvis's word, pushed in his direction. He's completely silent for a long moment. Jay, Tony leans back so that he's staring up at the ceiling. Put in a new order for a dozen of those red and gold silk thongs I like. You know, the ones. Yes. Jarvis sounds distinctly pained. I do indeed, sir. Good. Tony nods decisively as he starts removing the armor. I want solids in both colors and some nice patterns. Wait, make that 2. No, 3 dozen. Get me some different materials too, not just silk, ethically sourced, and no fur though. That itches. I want a wide variety. I need options. I'm starting to think a striptease might be the only way out of this, and I refuse to be underprepared. I admire your dedication and preparedness, sir. Jarvis cuts in dryly, and I'm sure you're very disappointed that such drastic measures might be necessary. I resent your tone, Jay. Tony grumbles. A man gets caught pole dancing on camera one time, and suddenly it's something everyone can nag you about instead of a legitimate fitness regime. There are a total of 15 videos of you demonstrating your fitness regime in various settings currently online, Jarvis informs him primly. It's hardly a stretch to believe you might have a fondness for the activity. 15? Tony pauses. Thinks for a minute. Should probably be grateful there aren't more of those out there, to be honest. Indeed, sir, especially as those 15 have a combined view count of over 10 million. Jarvis reminds him because he can never let Tony have nice things. Yes! Tony's fist pump is both elegant and dignified. We broke 10 million. Rhodey owes me a sponde and the secret to his feet. Man's got the nicest toes of all of us, and he swears he doesn't have them done. I personally think he's a lying liar who lies, and he's going to have to prove that to me. His feet are nicer than Pepper's, and we all know she's perfect, so he's got to have some kind of secret. It's only logical. Once again, sir, Jarvis almost sighs. You are awash with keen insights. Don't you forget it, Tony tells him smugly. If only I could, sir, Jarvis laments. If only I could. You should tell Iron Man that he's welcome to hang out with us too, you know. Clint informs Tony from where he's perched on the back of one of the kitchen chairs. He's got a fistful of chopsticks in one hand and a carton of donuts on the table in front of him. Feel kind of bad that we don't ever see the guy outside of battle. Tony has absolutely zero desire to know what he's doing. He's learned that ignorance is bliss where Clint's concerned most of the time, and he has no plans on changing that stance unless he starts a fire or sets off an explosion. And only then if they're too big for Clint and Jarvis to handle on their own. Pretty sure Iron Man knows. Tony grits out because he's still irritable over Steve's obliviousness from the day before. Since we're the same person and all. It's good that you two are that close, Clint tells him cheerfully. Sometimes I feel like me and Thasha are the same person too. Except she's terrifying and has better hair. So, wanted to make sure he knew. If it's the secret identity thing, you shouldn't worry about it. We can all keep a secret. Tony stares at him in disbelief. Oh, trust me. Tony finally mutters as he snatches up his coffee and stomps out of the room. I know. There, sir. Jarvis soothes him once he's back down in the workshop, his voice flat and dry. You are a strong, independent Iron Man. You do not need that validation. Tony just buries his face in his hands and screams. Behind him, the bats twirl around the workshop worriedly. Pumice stone? Tony repeats dubiously, one hand reaching up to pluck a cucumber slice off of his eye so he can lean forward enough to look at Rhodey in disbelief. Pumice stone. Rhodey gives a thumbs up in his general direction. That's the secret, Tones. Nice hot shower, pumice stone, rub down, almond oil. Boom, baby soft. Works for the hands, too. Shower rock. Tony grumbles as he adjusts his head wrap and then his robe and lays back down. Should have known it would somehow come back to that thing. Shouldn't let one bad experience ruin the beauty of a pumice stone for you. Rhodey chides him smugly, head tilted back and cucumber slices of his own firmly in place. Tried to tell you that's not what it was for. Should have listened to me. You could have avoided having to sit on a cushion for a week, and you would have had skin like mine for years now. But no. You were drunk, but of course you still knew better. Before he leaves, Rhodey takes the time to draw Tony's goatee on the faceplate of the armor in permanent marker. Tony doesn't bother to try and get it off. Think maybe it'll help. I thought that might improve your spirits, sir, Jarvis says. Tommy designed it, and I put in a specialized order at a local shop. You boys all do your old man proud, Tony says as he shakes the t-shirt out and stares at it in glee. It's soft and comfortable feeling and is, luckily enough for him, his favorite shade of red. I am Iron Man, the shirt says in rich gold lettering. Below the words, there's a pretty accurate rendition of his goatee, also in gold. When Tony shifts the shirt in his hands, just so he can see the faintest hint of glitter. Tony wholeheartedly approves. It's not quite the clapboard sign he was debating on custom making, but it's the next best thing. Nice shirt, Bruce tells him absently, cup of tea in one hand and tablet in the other. Thanks. Tony grins. The bots of Jay got it made for me. Nice to know they like Iron Man too, Bruce says. Gotta be a relief that he gets along with your kids like that, all things considered. Tony probably chokes on his coffee. It's too, Bruce. Tony practically whimpers once he can breathe again. I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. What? Bruce blinks at him over the edge of his glasses, expression openly puzzled. What did I do? Tony? Tony, was it something I said? Tony slinks out of the room without even bothering to answer. He still loves the shirt, though. It's extremely comfortable. Jarvis has excellent taste for someone who doesn't wear clothes. Tony steps his game up after that. The single I Am Iron Man t-shirt becomes another, and then another, which becomes a sweatshirt, and then a whole new set of tank tops that are designed to look like the armor itself. Jarvis also custom orders him a dozen silk ties from his favorite tailor with Iron Man heads and arc reactors sprinkled over them. Tony himself goes in and gets another half-dozen three-piece suits made, much to his tailor Frederick's delight. They all come with various Iron Man-themed embellishments. Pepper takes to looking at him with something that smacks pretty closely to amused pity, but Tony does his best to not let it get to him. He fails, but he still tries. S.H.I.E.L.D. falls not too long after that, and Tony's ongoing attempts to get the others to realize who's in the armor kind of falls to the wayside for a minute. They're too busy weeding through Hydra's information, shutting down active bases and agents, and hunting down Barnes. But within a month or two, Sam moves in, and Barnes manages to make it clear that he wants some space and is in the wind of his own accord, but is otherwise safe. It leaves Steve looking like a kicked puppy as he slinks around the tower, but he does perk up when Tony promises that Barnes has a place with them when he gets done playing Carmen Sandiego. So beyond all of that, things do eventually get back to normal, and Tony gets back to his project. I am Iron Man. Tony looks Natasha directly in the eyes as he speaks. You really should stop doing this to yourself. Natasha reaches up and pats him surprisingly softly on the cheek. She looks almost fond of him. Get some sleep, Antashka. You're not making any sense again. I am Iron Man. Tony repeats forcefully to his reflection. His own raccoonish-looking face stares back at him, hair a mess, and circles dark beneath his eyes. I am Iron Man, Tony repeats. Right? I am Iron Man, right, Jay? I mean, even I'm starting to doubt it. Indeed, sir, Jarvis agrees. You are indeed Iron Man. Tony pushes away from the mirror in his bathroom and staggers towards his bed, only to collapse onto it without any kind of grace. Are you sure, Jay? Tony asks, because everyone else seems dead set against it. So tell me I'm Iron Man again. And also that I'm pretty. I kind of need to feel pretty right now. Maybe that'll help. Tell me I'm a pretty Iron Man, Jay. You are indeed Iron Man, sir, Jarvis repeats dutifully. And I'm sure that if I were in possession of a physical body, I would likely be enamored with you. Good. Tony sighs as he finally settles down. Because I'm awesome. I'm Iron Man. But you knew that, Jay. Indeed I did, sir, Jarvis tells him softly. Indeed, you are. And then another month or so passes, and then everything gets thrown off course once again. Tony turns a corner into the kitchen, mind filled with schematics and an empty coffee cup in his hand, only to stumble to a halt just inside the door. Inside the kitchen, hair tousled but expression as bright as ever, is Steve. But he's not alone. Because Bucky Barnes has apparently decided that he's finally ready to come in out of the cold. Unfortunately for Tony, he decided to do that when Tony's least expecting it, and Jarvis didn't bother to warn him. Which, of course, means that Tony's a mess! He's in one of his new tank tops, his Iron Man helmet, covered sleep pants are hanging low around his hips, and he's pretty sure his hair looks like he stuck his tongue against a live wire on accident again. And as for Barnes, well, he just stands there, mental arm exposed to the room, jaws double covered, and hair long. His gray eyes heavy lidded and gaze piercing and watchful as he takes Tony in from his head to his toes. Oh no. Tony immediately whispers to himself instead of thinks, he's hot. It's an unfortunate mistake, but one he can't really fix because his brain is too mighty for a filter when it's 3 a.m. and he's already 6 espressos into his weekly Frantic Friday free-for-all. Or as Clint tends to call it, that man runs off of more caffeine and bad decisions than I do day. Which is fair. Tony! Steve looks absolutely delighted to see him and oblivious to what Tony accidentally barely whispered. Come be Bucky! Buck, this is Tony. He's the one I was telling you about. He keeps all of us up and running, both on and off the field. Especially Iron Man. Wouldn't have old Shellhead out in the field with us if it wasn't for him. Tony snorts bitterly at the massive understatement. Across from him, Barnes arches a brow. If he heard what Tony accidentally said, he shows no outer sign of that. Which is unfair because Tony's arguably over-caffeinated and under-rested and he can't handle all of that at the moment. Especially not when he'll probably prove to be just as oblivious as the rest of them. Barnes. Tony salutes him sloppily with his empty coffee cup. Welcome to the Tower and the Avengers. You'll probably fit right in, God help us all.